This is the new TK07, and this might be the most versatile solid axle basher you can buy. With selectable lockers, a 2-speed transmission, a 4S brushless system, selectable 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive, and high and low speed, this thing's got a ton going for it. From the front, it kind of looks like a Nissan Patrol. From the side, it kind of looks like a Jeep Cherokee, and I'm not sure what it looks like from the back, but overall, it's a good-looking truck. And unlike a lot of the competition, it's a fairly light Lexan body, which means it shouldn't be too top-heavy. That's going to help its performance quite a bit. This body has one of the easiest and most straightforward clipless retention systems I've ever seen. You just take these two tabs and turn them 90 degrees, and then it hinges right open and holds itself in position. The entire body hinge comes off with just 3 screws in the back. The lights have a single convenient removable connector, and the wiring clip is even reusable. Overall, I think this body looks really, really nice. It is fairly lightweight for its size. Inside, we've got a nice half interior, and you can see there is a ton of wiring for lights. We're going to be checking out those lights here in just a little bit, and those all connect to a light controller, which unfortunately has come away from its adhesive here. I'm going to stick this back on, but we'll have to keep an eye on that. With the body off, we also get a closer look at the clipless retainers. These do look really nice, and they've got quite a bit of support on the body, so I don't think these will be breaking anytime soon. The rear hinge mount is also a large, solid piece of plastic, and that looks pretty strong as well. On the back, we do have a full-size real spare tire, and hiding behind that is a real trailer hitch. This thing has a real locking mechanism on it, and it looks like you could actually use this to pull a trailer if you wanted to. It does look pretty darn strong. And then wrapping it up on the side, we can see we have a mirror, a snorkel, and a few other nice details like windshield wiper blades. However, underneath the body is where things get really interesting, and there's enough going on under here to make a TRX-4 jealous. I will say the one thing I'm not super thrilled about are these wheels. Taking this wheel nut off, which is oversized, we see we have 17mm hexes. These are aluminum hexes. The tires themselves are a clone of BFG KM3s, which is a great tire. The compound on them feels medium soft. I think it'll be a good general use trail bashing tire. It's not so soft as to be a dedicated crawling tire, but soft enough that it could be used for a little bit of light crawling. These tires are 195mm in diameter and 54mm wide, and they're on wheels that I honestly don't really like. These are some generic chrome 5-spokes, and whereas they look fine, I feel like they kind of let the rest of the truck down, and I would have liked to have seen something a little bit more modern and realistic on here. These wheels kind of feel like they're from that bling time period in full-size car modification, and it just doesn't work for me, but hey, maybe you like it. Let me know down in the comments. These do appear to be full-on bead locks, but let's make sure of that. And peeling back the corner, yes, these are genuine beadlock tires. These aren't glued on. If you're not familiar with what these are, basically the two halves clamp together, and they clamp the tire in between them so you don't have to use glue. It can be a bit of a pain to put them together, but it holds the tire on really, really well. And in my opinion, in the long run, is actually a superior design to glue-on tires. Beadlock tires are really common for crawlers, but really rare for bashers, and I'd like to see that change. Personally, I think this is a superior design. I am definitely excited to dig into the mechanics on this truck, but what I'm really excited to do is check out the electronics. The brushless 4S FOC system is going to be a beast on this thing. And Rlaarlo is claiming that the Servo has 45 kg/cm of force and a 0.9 second transit time. That's fast. Behind those tires in the rear, we've got a really nice looking center drive shaft, some really beefy looking 4-link suspension links, and a nice looking portal axle. Let's take a closer look at that. Being a pretty big 1/7 scale truck, most of the hardware on here is going to be pretty beefy. You can see this says 12.9 on it, which means these are grade 10 bolts. These bolts do appear to be pretty good quality, and I expect them to hold up pretty well to some abuse. The links those bolts were holding in are incredibly heavy. I thought these were aluminum, but they are actually stainless steel. This magnet sticks a little bit, but not too much, which means it's ferrous, but not carbon steel. Overall, given the size and weight of these, I don't think these are going to be getting bent anytime soon, and the ends also look pretty nice. I've been noticing more and more we've been getting this gray color for plastic. I'm not sure what that represents, but I have found that the gray colored plastic we have been getting seems to be pretty darn durable, and these rod ends have a little bit of drag on them, which I prefer. When the rod ends are loose, it tends to make the axle want to be able to move side to side, so I'd rather have them a little bit tighter just to start off with at least. The shocks have the same gray plastic on the bottom eye. The top eye is fully aluminum, as is the shock body and shock adjustment collar. The lower spring perch is positively retained with a screw, which is nice to see. Popping the spring off, we can see we have a bit of a dust boot here. That covers up a fairly thick looking shaft, and the shock feels like there's definitely some air in it. Pulling this cap off, we can see that, yeah, this shock is not completely full. This is fairly common for an RTR RC car, and I'm not going to fill it up the rest of the way just because I want to see how this thing behaves right out of the box, because that's how you'll be experiencing it. With that being said, the problem with a bunch of air in the shocks is, especially if you're going to be hitting a hard bump or even a jump, as the shock compresses, it hits that air pocket at the top, and you get a lot less damping right when you need it the most. Overall, though, I'd say these are pretty nice shocks, and they should perform their job just fine. Taking this axle off is just a little bit more complicated than a normal axle because this does have a locker in it, so it has a cable going to that locker. In order to remove that, we need to take these 4 screws out so we can get it free. With those 4 screws out, the cover comes right off and you can actually see the locker selecting fork. We'll take a closer look at what makes this work in just a second. But first, let's take a closer look at the outside of this thing. I want to say that this center drive shaft is probably one of the nicest center drive shafts I've ever seen. This thing is significantly beefier than most wheel axles. It looks really good. And these aluminum 17mm hexes also appear to be nicely made. The main downside of this setup, though, is that we have 17mm hexes, but not a standard 17mm screw thread here. So without adapters, that's going to kind of limit our tire choices. So I've got a couple of interesting choices we're going to try here in a little bit. And now taking a look at these portal gears, you can see these are sintered steel. They do appear to be fairly beefy though. With that being said, this is a big truck, so hopefully these will be stout enough to handle the power. It appears as though we are running all sealed bearings in this truck. A lot of times we get shielded bearings from companies like Rlaarlo, and especially something this expensive, sealed is definitely the way to go. These drive axles look pretty nice. However, at only about 45 Rockwell, they're not super hard. That is not inherently a bad thing though, as you do want a little bit of flex in something like this because the plastic of the axle housing is going to flex, and if your axles are too hard, they could shatter. So this might be appropriate for this car. Again, we'll have to see when we bash it. And of course, on the other side, we have the exact same thing. And then with those 2 axles removed, we can go ahead and get this differential out of here. This differential does appear to be pretty high quality. As you can see, we have a spiral bevel ring and pinion gear. The spiral bevel nature of these gears is really interesting. It's stronger because it allows a more constant tooth engagement, but it also allows physically more tooth surface to exist on a specific area. It might seem counterintuitive, but just the same way you can pack more cars into a parking lot if you park them at an angle, you can pack more teeth into a gear if you park them at an angle. The reason some people think that straight cut gears are stronger is because a lot of racing applications use straight cut gears, but that's not because the gears themselves are stronger. It's because angled profile gears create forces in more directions than straight cut gears do. And because of this, a transmission or differential can be made more simply with fewer bearings than one with angle cut gears. The fewer bearings you need, the more room you have for gear, which makes them not only simple, but potentially stronger. With that being said though, the gears themselves are not stronger. Now, pulling this apart, you can see that we have a grease-filled differential. This is a machined spiral bevel ring gear, and it does look very nice. Because these are portal axles, the final gear reduction happens out here at the end of the portals, so there isn't as much torque on the gear, which means this is actually even stronger than it looks. Inside, we have the differential gears. Again, more grease in here. We do have an O-ring to seal it. These are sintered steel. And then over here, you can see how the locking system works. On one side, the axle shaft goes through this dog clutch and then into the side of the gear. When this clutch is disengaged, the axle can move independently of the housing, meaning the differential action can do its job. When you engage it, it locks the axle to the side of the housing, which essentially locks out the action of the differential and locks both of the output axles together. The really cool thing about this type of selectable differential is it can change the driving dynamic dramatically depending on how you have it set up. And combining that with all the selectable options in the transmission, you end up with a pretty versatile vehicle that can behave a lot of different ways depending on what you have selected. By the way, I'm using hand tools here because these are 1.5mm head screws. Rlaarlo, please stop doing this in your larger vehicles. It's really not necessary. Now, I've been doing some research on the channel, and it came to my attention that some of you guys are not showing up as real RC fans. If you want to fix that, just hit that subscribe button so you can show up just like everybody else does. At the heart of this beast is crammed a big, beautiful sensored brushless motor, and that's being powered by a 140 amp brushless ESC. This ESC is using FOC, or field-oriented control, to power the motor. Think of FOC as a much more sophisticated way of actually sending the energy to the motor than previous generation ESCs. It makes the motor run cooler, smoother, quieter, and overall better. As you can see, we've got Rubicon caps in this ESC, which means it's probably going to be a pretty decent quality ESC. We do have a little 25mm fan on here that isn't protected, but the body around the outside should protect it fairly well. We do have a separate power button over here. And the coolest thing about this ESC is that it can be controlled through Bluetooth via an app. As you can see here, if we go to parameter settings, we've got a bunch of different options here. We can change the operating mode. Torque compensation strength basically means how much extra energy it'll provide to the motor to try to get up and over an obstacle without you squeezing the trigger more. We have the ability for automatic detection of lipo cells and a whole bunch of other stuff. This is probably the most fully featured ESC setup I've ever seen. And then we have an instrument panel that'll show you the RPM and some other data as well. Overall, this is a fantastic thing to have, and I'm really excited to see these kinds of features coming into cars like a Rlaarlo. I didn't see anywhere in the manual that it says this ESC or any of these electronics are specifically waterproof, but there is a wet condition maintenance area in the manual, so I'm assuming if they tell you how to dry stuff off, it's at least going to be water resistant. Underneath that battery tray, you can see this thing has all the servos. We've got a rear locker, a front locker, a high and low speed, and a 4-wheel drive, 2-wheel drive servo. Those are what are going to really make this thing versatile off-road. Now, with just a few screws removed and a couple of connectors, we can get this big old motor and transmission out of here. This is a 4282 motor, and it looks fairly similar to the G2 Hobbywing motors, though not exactly the same. This connector isn't identical, and I don't think Hobbywing actually makes it. With the back cover off, though, we see some really interesting things. First of all, this is fully potted, so they are at least trying to make this waterproof. Second of all, instead of having 3 sensors around the periphery, it looks like we just have a single sensor here in the middle, and this will be an actual angle sensor, and that's going to tell the ESC exactly what position the rotor's in. That's probably for that more advanced FOC control. It looks like a nice board, and it's nice to see they potted it because at least they are trying to waterproof. I've got a little cover here for the pinion gear. And as you can see, that is a machine steel gear. Mod 1 looks nice. There are quite a few functions in here, and there are going to be a ton of gears and probably a ton of springs. So let's take one part of it very carefully apart and see if we can get it back together when we're done. I generally recommend people don't go digging into these transmissions unless they have to, because there are usually quite a few small parts. But carefully pulling this apart, we can see we do have machined steel gears in here, and I believe there are machined steel gears throughout this transmission. I'm gonna very carefully put this back together because it is under spring tension. All right, I survived that, and this transmission really is cool. Not only does it look like a real transmission and transfer case, but it has a ton of nice features. The first one is that the output shafts counter-rotate. Counter-rotating output shafts cancel out each other's torque, so you don't get that body torque movement when you accelerate and brake. Further, though, this thing has the ability to run only in front-wheel drive for dig, and only in rear-wheel drive for some sweet burnouts. And helping us do burnouts is the 2-speed transmission. I'm not really sure why, but they have a little window here that lets you see the shifting action. As you can see, we're in low speed here. Now we're in high speed here. And we've even got neutral in the middle in case we want to rev the brushless motor. Overall, like I said, this is the most fully featured transmission I've ever seen in an RC car, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun with it. Speaking of sweet burnouts, I had these street meets on the shelf, and we're going to try turning this thing into a mall crawler here in just a few minutes. Now, the last thing I want to take a look at is this 45 kilogram centimeter 0.09 transit time servo. Those are some pretty lofty claims for an RTR servo. Let's see if it's got the chops inside to match them. This servo is connected to the rest of the steering system with a linear type servo saver. These not only usually work pretty well, but they also look cool. And now popping the bottom off. We can see this thing actually has a brushless motor inside it. You can tell because it has 3 different MOSFETs and 3 connections to the motor. A brushed system would only have 2 connections. Being brushless, this thing might actually be able to deliver the goods. Now, taking a quick peek under here, we can see we have both brass and steel gears in here. I'd love to see all steel gears, but brass can work as long as it's far enough up the gear train that it doesn't have too much torque on it. Will that servo be able to deliver the goods? Will it survive bashing? Let me get this truck put together and let's find out. Hang on, guys, before we take this thing out, I need to show you something. This is the truck's minimum speed. I didn't show you outside because I'm not sure you'd be able to see it outside, but the truck is actually moving right now. It's just moving very, very slowly. An infinite minimum speed on a vehicle isn't actually possible, but I think this is about as close as you can get. I cannot believe how slow this thing goes. And because of the FOC control, it should be able to climb at that speed too. Let me slow it down. And there it goes, climbing straight up. That is really awesome. That is some serious control. All right, let's go see what else it can do. Since this is a crawler, we need to do the hill climb test first. Nice and slow. We'll go ahead and go up this ramp. Most crawlers can make it pretty much all the way up the ramp, Let's see what this thing can do. It's getting stopped a little bit, add a little bit more throttle, so that FOC is kind of working. I turned the drag brake off. I'm wondering if that turned off the FOC as well. But getting just about to the top here. And yeah, that'll climb all the way to the top, not bad. And then as for side hill, we're getting a good just about 45 degrees. We've got quite a bit of body lean, but that seems pretty reasonable for what it is. But let's go do some bashing with it. Okay, I reset everything to the defaults. Let's make sure that the FOC control's working now. And yeah, it climbs right up that without any more throttle input. Now, as you guys know, I am not a crawler, and where I live, we don't really have a lot of rocks, but we've got some pretty cool rough stuff here we can test this thing out over. And so far, the control this thing has feels absolutely wonderful. I will say one thing I don't like is the fact that we have turn signals. Okay, we're getting a little stuck there, but we can just go ahead and lock both our differentials. And now we've got true four-wheel drive. And yeah, that's gonna be a lot more traction. Being able to lock and unlock the differentials is really great. When you have locked differentials, your steering really isn't very good. Speaking of steering, by the way, check out this servo. That is plenty of power and speed, and I might actually believe what they have to say about those specs. Back to the differentials though, when they are locked, you're not gonna be able to turn as well, but when they're unlocked, you're not gonna have as much traction. And being able to switch between those two makes a really big difference. As you can see here, we're gonna lose a little bit of traction. Nope, that actually went just fine. I was expecting it to be a lot worse. But overall, so far, this thing feels really good. It's nice in scale, and the fact that it's so large really makes it nice for crawling around like this. To repeat, I am not a crawler, but so far, just banging around on these little rocks like this, it seems to work really, really well. Let's see how it trail rides. Now this is more of the terrain I'm used to driving on with these kinds of trucks. Out in the woods, getting down low with it, riding over some sticks, going into some little washouts like this, seeing what you can do to climb up things, get a little stuck there, and just having a good, relaxing time. Driving around like this with an RC car is a completely different experience than hardcore bashing is, and it really is relaxing, and it's just a completely different kind of fun. It's more technical, it's more chill, it's a little bit more debris as you can see on the ground there, but we'll pick that up when we get done here. And yeah, this thing feels really nice out here. I don't even have the differentials locked, and it's still doing really well, but let's see how it does with something a little bit faster. And of course, by a little bit faster, I mean full-on 4S top speed. And you know what? For something that's supposed to be a crawler, that is really not too bad, and it's actually pretty stable as well. Is that gonna be setting any kind of speed records? Absolutely not. But it definitely is fast enough to have fun trail crawling and probably be able to do some donuts in two-wheel drive mode as well. Let's see how fast it is though. 14 miles an hour, that's not bad. Does it have enough power and speed to do a four-wheel drive burnout? Oh yeah, definitely. Let's put it in two-wheel drive though and see how it does. First of all, just for fun, let's try front-wheel drive. And yeah, that's front-wheel drive, all right, that's pretty silly. But now let's put it in rear-wheel drive. And now we can do some donuts. Let's lock up the rear diff. And now we can do it even better. Look at her go! All right, that's pretty fun. And it's actually more stable than I expected it to be. This thing really doesn't want to tip over, and I think that has a lot to do with how light the body is compared to the rest of the chassis. It leans over and then locks up. I do wonder how some position-sensitive damping would work on this. By the way, if you haven't seen my position-sensitive damping video, make sure you go watch it after this. It is the future of bashing. But this actually feels really good. And the fact that you can go from what I was just doing to something like this, which is super controlled, low-speed crawling over probably pretty much any terrain you want, is just a testament to how versatile a truck like this can be. Being able to switch the diffs in and out, high and low speed, front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, it just gives you a bunch of different driving styles. But let's try another driving style and put those on-road tires on it. Unfortunately, the hole in this wheel is way bigger than the shaft coming out of the axle. versatile? Fortunately, Traxxas did the same thing, so I have these adapters. These are just the little hex adapters off the 4S Max. Unfortunately, as you can see, that's not gonna work because there aren't any threads left sticking out. But fortunately, we can just go into CAD, design up some custom washers, then load up some carbon fiber in our Carvera, let it do some automatic probing, tell us exactly where it's gonna cut, pick up the bit for the cutting, drill the holes, cut the outline, and now we have these awesome little carbon fiber washers. With those washers on there, the wheels fit perfectly, but let's go see how they perform. All right, guys, full mall crawler mode. Let's see if we can do a burnout. Oh, yeah. Oh, man, this is going to be hard on the drivetrain, that's for sure. It does run pretty good, though. Whoop, just about tipped it. Oh, she tipped over. All right, let's see what kind of acceleration we get with this extra traction. Not bad. Almost popped a wheelie. Can we pop a wheelie? Not quite. Okay, guys, it definitely handles very strangely with these tires on it. It is pretty good at control, but it obviously does want to tip over. And yeah, these tires are not ideal for it, but it is fun to play around with what you can do, and this is definitely something you can do with it. Before we wrap this up, of course, both diffs locked, full mall crawler mode. Can we actually climb up something? Oh yeah, no sweat whatsoever. Let's try that again. Easy. Well, guys, Traxxas better watch out because this thing is significantly better than the TRX4. It's way more versatile, has more power, is faster, and is overall just a better truck. This larger size definitely makes it more versatile in where you can bash it, and overall it just works really, really well. The nice thing is, because this isn't a licensed body, this thing's actually going to be cheaper than the Wrangler versions of the same chassis that Rlaarlo sells. I believe both the brushed and brushless versions are going to be about $100 cheaper. Of course, that all depends on what's on sale and what isn't on sale. But overall, guys, if you're looking for a larger trail basher, but don't want to go all the way up to an SCX6, this is a fantastic option. And checking out one of these videos is also a fantastic option.